Hi, I'm Jane Farnham from Great British Speakers, and I'm here today chatting with social entrepreneur Gabby Jahanshahi-Edlin, who is the founder of one of NatWest's SC100 Top 100 Social Enterprises, also named one of London's most influential people by the Evening Standard, and a top 50 Trailblazer in gender equality by We Are the City. Gabby, there's some titles there for you. How are you?
I mean, I never normally introduce myself with titles, so it's quite nice to hear them. But yeah, I'm really well, thank you. I'm really delighted to be chatting to you today.
Yeah, it's absolutely lovely. So thank you so much for your time in doing this. It's great to find out more about the speakers that we're listing. So you're perhaps best known then for founding the pioneering organisation Bloody Good Period. Now, I'm intrigued to find out more. That was back in 2016. So tell me about the motivations that led up to that.
Yeah, so at the time, I was working in art galleries and I was a nanny. But I always was really sort of entrepreneurial and always trying to launch something myself, and was really interested in gender equality and basically like how to create social impact and do something better. And the dad of the nanny family that I was looking after invited me to come and help at an asylum seeker drop-in centre. So this is a drop-in centre that is specifically for people who are seeking asylum, so people who have landed here in the UK following war, persecution, all sorts of traumas. And this was basically like a refuge for them to come first Sunday of every month, get some new clothes, get some hot food, and basically get all the essentials. And when I sort of found out what all the essentials were that we were going to be delivering to people, I realised that there weren't any period products included. So I had just read an article that was probably one of the first of its kind in my generation anyway, that talked about what homeless women do on their periods. And the answer was, of course, they struggle immensely. And that was in my head when I started thinking about how I could help at this drop-in centre. And I asked if we would be giving out period products, and the reply was that there just wasn't the money, the storage to do it. But I also could tell that there was a sort of a bit of shyness around it and a bit of embarrassment as well. It wasn't something that had ever really been thought of except in emergencies, and anyone who has a period knows that it can feel like an emergency if you don't have what you need, but ultimately, like, it's not, it's just a bodily function. It shouldn't be an emergency. So I set about deciding to do something about it. I put a status on Facebook just saying I was collecting period products, which then grew to an Amazon wish list. I really thought it would just be my friends and family sending period products and getting them to this drop-in. But within a few weeks, I had hundreds of packs in my flat. People who I didn't know had started sending them via people that they'd heard, talk about it. And I started to realise that not only was this something that was obviously really needed, I'd found out that no drop-in centres gave regular donations of period products anywhere in the UK, but also people who were able to give really sort of had this need to try and help, and to do it with something that made a physical, tangible difference to a person's life. So not long after, I thought, well, this has got to be something sustainable. It's got to be something that the people who we're giving to can trust. It had started to grow beyond this one drop-in centre, and I'd started to give to somewhere in Leeds and to another one in London. And I decided to brand it and to make it something that not only took care of the problem, sort of on the ground, but also started to challenge the way that we thought about periods and the embarrassment that I'd felt, from even daring to talk about these period products. And so I called it Bloody Good Period because I thought, well, it's pretty British. Everybody needs a laugh. It's an embarrassing topic for so many people. So if you can make someone laugh just by the name, then you're instantly relaxing them a little bit.
That's what it says on the tin.
Exactly. And it's really clear what it is. There's no euphemism around it. It's nothing about, there's no secrets. There's no sort of ways of couching what we're talking about. Like, our tagline is, and probably will always be, everyone deserves a bloody good period, because it's true.
So you started out wanting to provide period products to this one drop-in centre. How did it grow? And then what were your ultimate aims before you stepped down?
So it really started to grow very quickly, product wise, because loads of people wanted to donate. And once it was easy to show people what the need was without actually showing, without doing sort of, what we would call period poverty, it was quite easy to show people the need without actually doing what we would call poverty porn. So we never showed photos of the women or the people who menstruate that we worked with, but we were really clear about what happens if you don't have the period products that you need. So this grew really quickly. We started to get loads and loads of donations, and I managed to bring in some amazing volunteers who took on the job of organising organising a storage centre. They would unpack and send out the products. And that really grew very quickly. And then following that, really sort of making it into an organisation. And it became a charity after a while. We had a struggle with registering the name with the Charity Commission. They didn't like it, but I felt that it was really, really important that the name stuck, because that was sort of the selling point of it. And eventually the people that we were working with, the women and people who menstruate in the centres, started asking questions around like their bodies, around like problems that they might have, because when you give someone a period product, you automatically break the ice, and people start to feel a lot more comfortable. But, I'm not a doctor. I couldn't answer any of those questions when I was sort of there giving out the product. So we decided to create an education program as well. And that's now like a flourishing program that works with various drop-in centres and women's groups, and delivers really high quality reproductive and sexual health education via doctors, gynecologists, nurses, sexual health professionals. The charity basically grew and grew in a way that I felt was sustainable and cautious, while also sort of making the most of the opportunities that we got. And then following that, in order to become a more sustainable charity, me and one of my colleagues at the time, Joe Gray, co-founded Bloody Good Employers, which is a service that provides communications, policy and culture recommendations and education to all organisations in the UK, all sorts of companies, and ultimately raises funds for Bloody Good Period as well.
So it seems like there's definitely a wider passion going on there. You've kind of gone from something that was quite a personal passion and something quite simple, and you've grown this huge organisation, and then a second one which is also bringing in inclusive leadership and culture. So tell us more about that. Is the Bloody Good Employer? Is that right?
Bloody Good Employers, yeah. Right? I mean, I've worked in some pretty dire places management wise. I've always been lucky enough to have direct line managers who are wonderful, but above and around that, I've really seen what not great management can do. And so it was always my aim with Bloody Good Period to launch a feminist organisation, and by that I mean working with really feminist values of empathy and kindness and inclusivity, and ensuring that with a diverse workforce, you're accommodating people for who they are and where they come from. BGP has never, and probably will never be, a 9-to-5 job where you come in at 9 and you leave at 5. That's not to say people work beyond that. What I mean is they work flexibly around their lives. People are able in the organisation to talk about issues that they might be having with their own bodies or with their family, and how that might affect their work. And that's always taken into consideration. And I think with that respect comes people working really hard and really passionately for the organisation, and people who really, really care about what they do and really want to make a difference to other people's lives. And that's something that I never got the chance to work in myself, and so I really wanted to create it. And it's by no means perfect, and it's always it's always improving, and it's always a work in progress. But it was more important to me actually than just doing the work, just delivering the products, just delivering the education, or even just creating cultural change, was that the people who actually do the work feel the benefit of it as well.
So how do you spread that information to other businesses? Because obviously you're an organization in yourself, you've got people working around you, and obviously you work to a certain ethos and certain integrities and authenticity and kindness. How do you spread that message, to other businesses?
I mean, I think the first way is probably just leading by example. So ensuring that I'm the best, or was, I'm not the CEO anymore, but I was the best that I could be in that work, and was always trying and improving and trying to get feedback about how I could do better, but also giving myself a bit of a break and not leaning into the perfectionist side of myself, which would be very easy to do. But also talking about it. So I had the opportunity to do a lot of public speaking and to be on loads of panels and to be able to talk about that way of leading, and often in conversation with people who were also working in that way, I felt was really powerful to do. But also creating bloody good employers, I felt was a sort of really direct and tangible way to show people, or to encourage people how to lead with kindness. Because if you've got to start thinking about people's periods in your workplace, then that's going to bring on some empathy. And if you're someone who doesn't menstruate, or who even if you do menstruate but you don't get period pains, for example, there are some lucky women I've heard, you might have to extend your empathy. You might learn a lot about how other people are living, are surviving, or even how they're thriving, and start to incorporate that into your own leadership. And I think with that brings empathy around other things. So we always talk about bloody good employers. It's not just this one piece of work that you do and then you're done. It's part of a much larger, what you might call diversity and inclusion, or you might just call anti-oppressive work, which would include mental health, anti-racism, religious inclusion. All of these types of things have to be done holistically. Periods and menopause are just one part of that.
But it doesn't stop there, does it? I mean, you're making such sense, and it's such a lovely thing to hear that you're doing. But you've now founded More Than Money. Now, I understand this is an online community help to sort of get the pay that they deserve. So tell me quickly about that and how you work alongside other organisations.
More Than Money is an online community that I co-founded about 4 or 5 years ago with fellow charity CEO Shay Yakiwowo, because we were finding that we were being invited to speak at these big corporate events, and basically we're never getting paid for them. And it wasn't that we weren't asking to be paid. For example, once I was invited to a very well-known alcohol brand that was collaborating with a very well-known advertising agency, a huge, big, expensive corporate affair, to speak about equality. And when I asked about what the fee would be, and bearing in mind at the time, all my speaking fees were going directly to the charity, it was really important that if I was spending my time and energy in these events, that money would go back into the work we were doing. I received an email that said all the other speakers have said that they want to donate their fee to charity. So obviously, I was like, fine, okay, sure. Bearing in mind I wasn't earning either at that point from Bloody Good Period either. But I ended up having a chat with some of the other speakers, all women, and asked them, did you agree up front to give your money to charity? And they said no, they told us that everybody else had agreed. So they kind of expected us not to talk to each other, knowing that money is often such a shameful subject to people. They thought that we just wouldn't chat, we just wouldn't know. And then this started to, it was ridiculous. And it started to happen again and again. And every time I turned up at an event, I would say to people, are you getting paid for this? If I had asked to get paid, and they had agreed, then they would say, oh no, I didn't. They said that no one was getting paid. And so it just started to sort of snowball. And what's come of it is a group of, hundreds of women and non-binary people in mostly activist industries who talk to each other about money, who ask each other, how much are you getting paid for this? Have you been invited to this event? Or, what would I charge for this kind of thing? And it's been really powerful, and people have been earning a lot more than they would ordinarily. But it was really inspired by two authors that I had read. There's Atega Awagba, who's written We Need to Talk About Money. And then there's Alex Holder, who wrote Open Up, which is also about money. And they've been really sort of influential in this work that I've done. And yeah, just getting people paid who deserve to be paid for doing what is essentially work. Or not even essentially, it is work, you know.
There is it's a funny old game. There's a lot of events that people do not want. They sort of dangle a carrot. Well, if you come here and speak to these people, there'll be lots of other work but there's no guarantee, and it's if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys at the end of the day. And I think it's really important to put value on what you're talking about. And this is obviously what we're here to do. And if I can help in any way, by the way, with that group, in terms of helping people, gauge what they should be getting, because it is a very grey area when you're dealing with charities, but then charities have a business arm, and then there's money at the door. So and if you're taking a whole day out of your time to go and speak to people, it's really important that your time is valued. But let's go to corporate engagements then, because obviously that's largely, by and large, the work that we do together. Tell me a little bit about your speaking work, what you love to talk about, and what gives you the biggest buzz about it.
Well, I've had the pleasure of speaking at some really interesting places. I've spoken at Apple, I've spoken at Disney, I've spoken at The Guardian, a real range of big organizations, but then also I love speaking at schools. I love talking to young girls about activism and how to make a change. But I think, I've always really enjoyed public speaking. The first time I ever did it, I did a talk about kangaroos when I was 9 at primary school, and I still have I made my own slides. And when I say slides, I drew pictures of kangaroos. And I drew a picture of a dead kangaroo, which I think is a bit weird when I look back. But I really enjoyed it. I just got a complete buzz out of it. And I've always tried to carry on doing speaking in the work that I've done so far. But Bloody Good Period really gave me the opportunity to really sort of get a lot more practice in and speak in front of really big crowds, and even speaking in front of small crowds as well, because that can sometimes be more challenging. Obviously,
absolutely.
Sometimes you're looking someone in the eye, and that's a lot more challenging than actually just seeing lights.